I'm Abigail Morrison. I'm 32 years old. And 3 months ago, my boss asked me one question in a glass-walled conference room in Scottsdale, Arizona, and the answer my husband gave on my behalf unraveled 6 years of marriage, exposed systematic professional sabotage, and handed me back something I hadn't realized I'd lost. Myself. The question was simple. 4 words. Why the taxi today? That's it. That's all Elena Rodriguez asked. And before I could even open my mouth, my husband Owen, the company's HR director, the man who was supposed to be on my side, looked up from his phone and said, in the most casual voice imaginable, "Her sister uses that car now." He didn't look at me when he said it. He didn't look apologetic. He said it the way you'd mentioned you'd grabbed milk from the store. Like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. He didn't know those 4 words were about to end his career, our marriage, and the version of me that had been slowly disappearing for 6 years. But before I tell you what happened next, I need to take you back. Back to where it started, not with the car. Not even with Owen. Back to a Tuesday morning in our kitchen, 6 years into a marriage I kept telling myself was fine. Before we go further, if this story already sounds familiar, if you've ever had someone speak for you in a room where you should have been speaking for yourself, please take a moment to like and subscribe. But only if this truly resonates. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where you are right now. Let me tell you about the kitchen first. It was a beautiful kitchen. Owen had picked it out himself. The white quartz countertops, the restaurant-grade espresso machine he'd researched for 3 weeks, the steel-cut oats he kept in a glass jar by the stovetop because his personal trainer said they were optimal for sustained energy. The whole kitchen felt like Owen's idea of what a successful life looked like, down to the pendant lights he'd ordered from a catalog without asking what I thought. I made instant coffee. I'd tried the espresso machine exactly 3 times. The 3rd time, Owen had walked over mid-attempt and taken over, explaining quietly that I was tamping the grounds incorrectly, that I was doing it wrong. After that, I just microwaved water in a mug and stirred in crystals from a jar I kept in the back of the cabinet. The cheap kind Owen said was garbage. That particular morning, the Tuesday that started everything, I was standing at the kitchen window at 6:15 a.m., mug in hand, watching the sunrise paint Camelback Mountain in shades of pink and gold. The Audi should have been in the driveway. It wasn't. My designated parking spot at Scottsdale Tech had been empty for 3 weeks. Every morning I stood at that window with my cheap coffee and felt the absence of that car like a missing tooth. You know the feeling. Your tongue keeps finding the gap even though touching it hurts. I kept telling myself it was temporary. That Owen's sister Charlotte really did need it more than I did. That I was being materialistic and petty for caring so much about a car. But standing there in the silence, that particular silence of a house that functions on one person's preferences, I knew it wasn't about the car. It was about the fact that I was disappearing. Let me back up further. Let me tell you who I was before Owen, or more accurately, who I was becoming right up until the moment I met him. I grew up in Mesa, Arizona, the younger of 2 daughters. My older sister Diane was the one everyone understood. She was an elementary school teacher, married at 26, first grandchild by 28. She fit into the story my parents had imagined for their daughters without any friction at all. Diane came home for every holiday. Diane called every Sunday. Diane organized the family photos and remembered every birthday and brought the right kind of wine to every dinner. I was good at computers. That was how my mother described it at family gatherings. Abigail is good with computers. Like it was a useful but somewhat baffling hobby, the way someone might say Abigail is good with crossword puzzles or Abigail can fix a leaky faucet. She never quite understood that what I did, designing large-scale software architecture, building systems that managed millions of data points simultaneously, was not the same as knowing how to fix a printer. My father was proud of me in the abstract way that fathers are proud of daughters who succeed professionally. He came to my college graduation. He shook my hand when I got my first job. But the conversations we had at family dinners always circled back to Diane's kids, Diane's classroom, Diane's life, the one that made sense. I didn't resent Diane. I want to be clear about that. She was kind and she loved me in her way. But there was a particular kind of loneliness in that house growing up, the loneliness of being capable and overlooked, of achieving things and having them noted briefly before the conversation moved on to something more recognizable. I learned early that my achievements needed an interpreter. When I was 22, I got my first real job as a junior systems architect at a mid-sized tech firm in Phoenix. I was earning $58,000 a year, which felt enormous, and which my parents immediately worried about, all that responsibility, all that pressure, as though success were something to be cautious of. I rented a studio apartment in Tempe with thin walls and a shower that went cold after 4 minutes and a window that looked out onto a parking lot. I loved it. It was mine. I met Owen at a company networking event 3 years later. He was 31. I was 25. He had this particular quality I mistook for confidence, the kind of ease that comes from never having doubted himself in a room. He told good stories. He laughed loudly and made everyone around him feel included. On our second date, he told me he'd turned down a higher-paying position in California because he wanted to build something in Arizona, and I found that admirable. Rootedness. Intentionality. We dated for 2 years. We got married in a vineyard outside Sedona with 120 guests and string lights, and my mother crying happy tears. I was 27. Owen was 33. I thought we wanted the same things. I didn't understand yet what I was signing up for. Here is what 6 years of marriage to Owen Callahan actually looked like. Not the big dramatic things. Not screaming fights or cruel names or anything that anyone would point to and say, "There, that's abuse." Nothing that clean. What it looked like was this: small daily erosions. Choices made for me in the guise of partnership. Preferences overridden in the language of helpfulness. A life that slowly, quietly became his. The kitchen was his. The schedule was his. The social calendar was his. When his mother called at 10 p.m. on work nights and I didn't answer, Owen would find a way to mention it the next day, not accusatorially, just observationally. "She's been asking about you. She worries." When I suggested we spend Christmas with my family for once, he'd remind me, gently, that his parents were getting older. When I asked for a weekend without plans because I had a major presentation Monday, he'd already committed us to his brother's birthday party, and somehow my needing to work made me the one who was out of step. "You're always putting your job before family," he'd say. My parents are starting to notice. There was always a reason it was my fault. The credit card. That's the one I should have caught earliest. I found out when a statement arrived with $3,000 in charges I'd never made. Golf equipment. Expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never been to. A leather jacket I'd never seen. When I confronted Owen, he looked at me with genuine confusion, or what I now recognize was performed confusion. "I thought you'd want the rewards points. Why are you being weird about this?" He'd opened a line of credit in my name without asking me, and somehow I was the one being weird. I said okay. I accepted it. And in accepting it, I taught him that I would. Then there was the charity board. Owen's mother ran a local nonprofit, a perfectly nice organization that raised money for children's literacy. Owen volunteered me for their social media committee without checking my calendar, without asking if I had time, without considering that I was a senior solutions architect and not a social media manager. When I said I couldn't do it, I had a major client presentation that week. He was wounded. "She was so excited you were going to help." She told everyone. So I did it. I stayed up until midnight 3 nights in a row managing their Instagram account and preparing for my presentation. I got through both. I apologized to Owen for the stress I'd caused. Do you see the pattern? I see it now so clearly. But from inside it, each incident looked small enough to excuse. Each one had just enough of a reasonable explanation that I could file it under marriage as compromise and move on. The promotion changed things. Or it should have. 5 years into working at Scottsdale Tech, I was promoted to Senior Solutions Architect. It was the achievement I'd been building toward years of late nights, complex projects, client relationships carefully maintained. A 20% raise, a reserved parking spot, and a pearl-white Audi Q5 with caramel leather interior as part of the compensation package. The car was company property, registered in my name, with me listed as the responsible party. The night I got the news, Owen poured champagne and told me not to brag about it too much. People will think you're arrogant. Let me handle the announcement at the company social. I know how to position these things. So at the celebration dinner the company threw, Owen gave the toast about my promotion. Owen explained to everyone what my new role would entail. Owen was proud on my behalf while I stood beside him smiling, feeling like a prop in my own success story. I was 31 years old, and I had already learned to be invisible inside my own life. Now, back to that Tuesday morning in the kitchen. 3 weeks before everything broke open. Owen was sitting at the island scrolling through his phone, eating his steel-cut oats. His personal trainer had approved them. We'd stopped buying the cereal I liked 6 months earlier. Charlotte's Jeep is in the shop, he said without looking up. She's got that big interview Tuesday. Think she could borrow your car for a couple days. I hesitated. My fork was halfway to my mouth. The Audi wasn't just my car, it was company property. My name was on the registration. If Charlotte got into an accident, a ticket, anything, I would be the one answering to Scottsdale Tech's legal team. I don't know if that's a good idea, I started. It's technically company property, and I'm liable if Owen's eyes flicked up from his phone. Just for a second. But that look. I'd learned to dread that look. The one that said I was failing some invisible test I hadn't known I was taking. You don't trust my family, do you? His voice was quiet, almost sad. After everything they've done for us. And there it was. The trap I'd learned to recognize, but never learned to avoid. His parents had loaned us $40,000 for the down payment on our house 3 years ago. Owen brought it up whenever I tried to set a boundary with his family. It was a number with a hook in it, precise enough to be irrefutable, large enough to constitute a debt that never fully cleared. Of course I trust them, I heard myself say. Automatic. Programmed. She can take it. Owen smiled. Not his real smile. The one that had the warmth of the actual man I'd married somewhere inside it. This was the other smile. The one that meant he'd won something. Thanks, babe. You're the best. He went back to his phone. Charlotte was supposed to return the car after 2 days. Then it was 3 days. Then a week. Then just a few more days became she's got client meetings became her Jeep needs more work than they thought. Every time I brought it up, Owen made me feel like I was the problem. It's just a car, Abby. Why are you being so materialistic? She's family. Family helps each other out. Each conversation ended the same way, me apologizing, backing down, feeling guilty for caring about something that apparently made me a terrible person. 3 weeks of taxis. $15 to $20 every morning. My hair's still damp because I had to wait for the rideshare instead of leaving on my own schedule. My team exchanging careful glances when I rushed in 13 minutes late. My assistant Jennifer giving me those looks. The ones you give someone who's falling apart but won't admit it. Everything okay, Abigail? Fine. Just some car trouble. She nodded. Her eyes said she didn't believe me. I didn't believe me either. The morning it happened was a Tuesday. Elena had texted me the night before. Leadership meeting at 9. Conference room B. Don't be late. I paid the rideshare driver $14 and walked into the building with 8 minutes to spare. I grabbed my laptop and walked into that glass-walled conference room at 8:58 a.m. My team was already there. Marcus with his thermal coffee mug. Jennifer with her color-coded planner. 2 new hires whose names I kept mixing up. And Owen standing next to Elena in his navy suit and burgundy tie, wearing his HR director smile. We've left home together 40 minutes earlier in tense silence. Now he looked at me like I was just another employee. The meeting proceeded normally. Queue for priorities. New client dashboard. API integration timeline. I tried to focus, but I could feel Owen's presence in the room like low-voltage current. Then the meeting ended. People gathered laptops, checked phones, prepared to leave. Abigail, can you stay for a minute? Elena's voice was kind but firm. I froze. Owen was still there, standing by the window with his phone, pretending not to listen. But I knew that stillness. The way he held himself when he was absorbing every word, cataloging every response, preparing his counterargument. 6 years of marriage had taught me to read him better than he'd ever bothered to read me. Elena closed the door. Why did you come in a taxi today? She looked at me with genuine concern. What happened to the car we gave you for your promotion? My throat tightened. I could feel Owen behind me like heat from a furnace. My mind raced through every lie I'd told myself for 3 weeks: maintenance issues, scheduling conflicts, car trouble, all of them ready to be deployed, to protect him, to preserve the image of Abigail Morrison, senior solutions architect, who had everything under control. My mouth wouldn't form the words. And before I could force them out, Owen spoke. Her sister uses that car now. Pleasant. Casual. The same tone he used when mentioning he'd picked up dry cleaning or confirming dinner reservations. The silence that followed felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I watched Elena's face change in real time. Confusion first, her eyebrows drawing together. Then understanding. Then something else. Something that looked like controlled, professional anger. Her eyes moved from Owen to me. "I'm sorry," she said slowly. "Did you just say her sister is using a company vehicle?" Owen looked up from his phone. His smile was still in place. That easy, charming smile that had gotten him through 1,000 difficult HR conversations. "It's temporary. Family situation. Charlotte needed reliable transportation for some important meetings. You know how it is. Charlotte is your sister," Elena said. Her voice had gone cold in a way I'd never heard before. Not Abigail's. Something shifted. I felt it physically. The moment when the carefully maintained separation between our personal lives and our professional lives collapsed completely. And I understood in that instant that I had a choice to make. I could back Owen up. I could smile and say yes, it was temporary, I'd agreed to it, it was fine. I could protect him the way I'd been protecting him for 6 years, making myself smaller so he could stay comfortable. Or I could tell the truth. Actually, I heard myself say. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Steadier than I felt. Clearer than it had been in months. We never discussed it. Owen's head snapped toward me. The smile faltered for just a second. Genuine surprise breaking through his practiced composure. He hadn't expected me to contradict him. Not here. Not in front of my boss. Owen told me his sister needed the car for 2 days, I continued. Now that I'd started, I couldn't stop. That was 3 weeks ago. I've been asking for it back ever since. Abby. Owen's voice had an edge. A warning. Don't do this here. Don't do what? Something was rising in my chest. 6 years of swallowed words. Unspoken resentments. Accommodations I'd made while telling myself they were compromise. Tell the truth about what happened to company property? You're making this into something it's not. No. I was standing now, though I didn't remember getting up. I'm finally being honest about what's been happening. The car is registered to me. It's company property. I'm liable for it. Your sister has had it for 3 weeks without authorization, and every time I've asked for it back, you've made me feel like I'm being unreasonable for caring. Owen's jaw tightened. That muscle in his cheek that twitched when he was angry. This is a private matter between us. We can discuss it at home. It stopped being private when it involved company assets, Elena said. Her voice cut through the tension like a blade. She stood up. Owen, you need to leave. Abigail and I need to talk. As Director of Human Resources, you'll recuse yourself from any matters involving your spouse. Elena's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. That's policy. Section 4, Paragraph 2 of the Employee Handbook. You wrote the policy. In fact, I remember the meeting. For a long moment, Owen just stood there, calculating, weighing his options. His eyes moved from Elena to me and back again. Then he straightened his tie with sharp, precise movements. Fine. His voice was tight. I'll be in my office if you need me. He picked up his phone and walked to the door. His hand was on the handle when he paused and looked back, not at Elena. At me. That expression. The one I'd seen before, usually late at night after I'd pushed back on something he wanted. Disappointment mixed with something colder. Something that said, "You'll regret this." Then the door clicked shut behind him. I stood in the sudden silence, heart pounding, hands trembling. I had just contradicted my husband in front of my boss. I had just made our private dysfunction public. I had no idea what happened next. Sit down, Abigail. Elena's voice was gentler now. I sat, my legs unsteady. I'm going to ask you some questions. I need you to be completely honest with me. What followed was the conversation I didn't know I'd been waiting 6 years to have. Elena asked me how long Charlotte had had the car, how Owen had framed the request, what happened when I tried to get it back. And with each question, the careful structure I'd built, the architecture of excuses and rationalizations, and this is just marriage, this is just compromise, began to come apart. Abigail, Elena said, after I'd explained about the down payment, about the guilt trips, about the way saying no always cost me more than saying yes. Is this the first time Owen has used his position or your relationship to influence your professional life? The question sat between us like something explosive. I thought about the credit card. I thought about the vacation days lost to his mother's charity board. I thought about the dinner parties where Owen interrupted my stories to explain to our friends what I really meant. I thought about last month, my supervisor Paul pulling me aside in the hallway, looking uncomfortable, eyes not quite meeting mine. Owen thinks maybe we should rate you meets expectations instead of exceeds this quarter, Paul had said carefully. He's worried about optics. With the recent layoffs and performance management initiatives, he thinks it won't look right if you get top marks while other people are being managed out. You understand, right? I had understood. I'd understood that my own husband was sabotaging my career to protect his image. And I had accepted it without fighting because fighting Owen never ended well. No, I told Elena quietly. It's not the first time. Her expression shifted into something harder. Something that was no longer just a concerned boss, but a woman preparing for battle. I need you to tell me everything, Abigail. Not just about the car. Everything. Dates, conversations, specific instances where Owen's personal relationship with you affected your work or his professional decisions. My hands were shaking. What's going to happen? Elena stood up. What's going to happen is I'm going to retrieve your car today. And then I'm going to have a very serious conversation with our CEO about whether someone who can't maintain professional boundaries should be running our HR department. She walked to the door. David, she called to her assistant. I need you to contact our legal team. Tell them it's urgent. Unauthorized use of company property and potential conflict of interest in HR operations. Then she turned back to me, and her expression softened slightly. Abigail, I need you to understand something. You're one of our best architects. Your work is exceptional. I've watched you build systems that have saved this company millions of dollars. And I've watched you show up early, stay late, and deliver beyond expectations for 3 years. She paused. What I should have noticed, and I'm sorry I didn't, is that you've been shrinking, getting smaller, less confident. I see it now, and I should have seen it sooner. Tears burned in my eyes. One escaped, sliding hot down my cheek. I thought I was handling it, I said. My voice broke. You are surviving it, Elena said gently. There's a difference. I left the building in a daze. I gave the rideshare driver the address of a coffee shop in Scottsdale I used to go to before Owen, decided it was overpriced and pretentious. I ordered something expensive without checking the price. I sat in the corner with my phone face down and tried to breathe. By the time I turned the phone over, I had 17 missed calls from Owen, 23 text messages. We need to talk. Come home. Why are you ignoring me? This is ridiculous, Abby. You're making a huge mistake. My mother is calling me. What did you tell Elena? Answer your phone. I turned it face down again. I needed to talk to someone who would tell me the truth. I called Rachel, my best friend from college, the one who'd driven an hour to sit with me when Owen and I had our first real fight 4 years ago, the one who'd been gently, carefully, diplomatically concerned about my marriage for longer than I'd let myself notice. She answered on the second ring. Hey, I was just thinking about. Rachel. My voice cracked. Something happened at work with Owen. I need to talk to you. Her tone changed immediately, sharpening with concern. What did he do? So I told her. Everything. The car, the conference room, Elena's questions, the investigation about to begin. The words came out faster than I could organize them, overlapping and circling back. When I finished, there was a beat of silence. He did what? Her voice was sharp with fury. Abby, that's not just inconsiderate. That car is your compensation. Your property. Your responsibility. What he did, he knew exactly what he was doing. He's an HR director. He knows company policy better than anyone. He counted on you being too nice to call him out on it. He said it was temporary. He said I was being selfish about family. His family, not yours. A pause. Abby, you need to get out of there. Don't go home tonight. Come stay with me. I can't just leave. We own a house together. Where would I? My apartment. Guest room. It's yours for as long as you need it. Her tone left no room for argument. Listen to me. You just told your boss that your husband has been sabotaging your career and abusing his position for years. Owen knows that by now. Do you really want to be alone with him tonight? My hands went cold. Pack a bag, Rachel said. I'm serious. Get what you need and come here. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. At 3 p.m., my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I opened the text. Your company's lawyers just sent me some threatening letter about the car. Are you serious right now? After everything our family has done for you, you're actually going to destroy Owen's career and humiliate us all over a CAR. Charlotte, 3 weeks of driving my Audi. Outraged that there were consequences. Part of me, the part trained over 6 years, wanted to apologize immediately. To text back and say it was all a misunderstanding, that I'd fix it, that I was sorry for causing trouble. A larger part of me felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. The company was taking it seriously. They'd sent a legal letter. Elena had kept her word. I didn't respond to Charlotte. I checked my work email instead. A message from Elena, sent 20 minutes earlier. Legal team has issued formal demand for return of company property. Vehicle must be returned to Scottsdale Tech Plaza parking lot by 10 a.m. tomorrow, or we will involve law enforcement. You did the right thing, Abigail. I screenshotted the email and saved it to 3 different places. Then I pulled out the legal pad Elena had given me, opened my laptop, and started writing everything I could remember. The credit card, the vacation time, the dinner parties, the performance reviews. The more I wrote, the clearer the pattern became. Not a collection of isolated incidents. A system. Deliberate, consistent, sustained. By 5 p.m., when I finally looked up, I knew 2 things with absolute certainty. I was not going to apologize. And I was not going home. I need to pause here for a second. If you've ever been in a relationship where you kept accepting less and less until you couldn't remember what your actual life felt like, drop a fire in the comments. And if you think Owen is going to regret what he said in that conference room, type karma. Because what happened next? Even I didn't see it coming. I need to tell you something about those 6 years, not just the marriage, but what was happening underneath it. While Owen was slowly overriding my preferences and undermining my confidence and making himself the center of our shared life, I was building something. Maybe because I couldn't stop. Maybe because work was the one place where my competence was undeniable, where my results spoke in a language Owen couldn't translate into a comment about my attitude or my ambition or the way I communicated with normal people. Whatever the reason, I was building. 3 years before the conference room, I'd applied for a principal architect position and made it to the final round before getting passed over for someone with less experience. I told myself I wasn't ready. 2 years before, I'd applied for VP of Engineering, made the final round again, passed over again. At the time, I'd accepted both losses. I wasn't ready. The other candidates were better fits. I needed more experience. I know now that those losses weren't about my readiness. But I'll get to that. First, let me tell you about the night I went home. I needed clothes, documents, my laptop charger. I couldn't avoid Owen forever. We shared a house, a life, a mortgage with his parents' name attached to the down payment in a way that felt like a lien on my choices. When the rideshare pulled up at 7 p.m., I saw Owen's Range Rover in the driveway, and my heart started racing. I paid the driver, walked to the front door, unlocked it with hands that weren't quite steady. Owen was in the kitchen, pacing, tie loosened, face red, hair disheveled from running his hands through it. The second I walked in, he spun toward me. Do you have any idea what you've done? His voice was loud, sharp, barely controlled rage. I'd heard this tone before, usually late at night, after I'd pushed back on something, but never quite this intense. Charlotte is humiliated. My mother has been calling me all afternoon crying. The company sent my sister a legal threat, Abigail. A legal threat. Over a car. It's not my car, I said, keeping my voice level. It's company property. I'm responsible for it. It's been 3 weeks. You're doing this to punish me. You went to Elena and made me look incompetent. You turned a simple family favor into some kind of corporate scandal. I didn't turn it into anything. You gave away company property without authorization. That's a policy violation. Elena asked me about the car, and I told her the truth. We're married. What's yours is mine. Not when it's company property assigned specifically to me. Not when my name is on the registration, and I'm legally liable for what happens to it. Owen's laugh was bitter. Ugly. This is about control. You can't stand that I made a decision without asking your permission. You've always been like this. Everything has to be exactly how Abigail wants it, or you throw a tantrum. I stared at him. This man I'd spent 6 years trying to please. This man I'd made myself smaller for, quieter for, less demanding for. No, Owen, I said. This is about respect. Something you've never shown me. I've given you everything. A home, a life, support for your career. You've sabotaged my career. I said it out loud for the first time. You've been telling my supervisor to lower my performance ratings for 2 years. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Owen went very still. That muscle in his jaw twitched. I don't know what you're talking about. Paul called me this morning. He told me everything. Every review cycle, you pull him aside and suggest I'm not performing as well as I should be. That I'm coasting. That I'm not a team player. I was trying to protect you. His voice had lost some of its conviction. The optics of you getting top ratings while I'm your husband and the HR director, it would have looked bad for both of us. So you tanked my bonuses and my promotion opportunities to protect your image. Our image. It's our life, Abby. Our reputation. I picked up my bag. I'm staying at Rachel's tonight. You're leaving? His voice cracked slightly. You're actually leaving over this? I'm leaving because I can't be here right now. Because standing in this kitchen with you feels like drowning. I walked to our bedroom and started pulling clothes from the closet. Owen followed, standing in the doorway. If you leave tonight, don't bother coming back, he said. His voice was quiet now. Cold. This is it, Abby. If you walk out that door, we're done. I paused, a sweater in my hands. 6 years ago, that threat would have worked. I would have backed down, apologized, done whatever it took to fix things. But that was before the car, before the conference room, before I'd finally seen the pattern for what it was. Not marriage. Not compromise. Erasure. Okay, I said quietly. We're done. I packed 2 bags. One with clothes. One with documents, my laptop, the things I'd need. Owen stood in the doorway the entire time, watching me with an expression that shifted between rage and disbelief. When I was finished, I walked past him without a word. Down the stairs. Through the kitchen. To the front door. You'll regret this, Owen called after me. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. I didn't answer. I walked out into the warm Phoenix evening, put my bags in the rideshare, and gave the driver Rachel's address in Tempe. Rachel was waiting. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. You did the right thing, she said. You did the right thing. She poured wine and ordered takeout and didn't ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. I curled up on her couch and tried to breathe through the panic rising in my chest. My phone buzzed continuously. Owen's mother, his brother, Charlotte, all of them with variations of the same message. I was destroying their family. I was cruel. I was vindictive. I would regret this. I blocked the numbers one by one. The next morning, a text from Elena, retrieved at 8 a.m. Full tank, professionally detailed. Welcome back. There was a photo attached. My Audi, parked in my designated spot at Scottsdale Tech Plaza, gleaming in the early morning light. My name on the sign, Senior Solutions Architect. I started crying and couldn't stop. The investigation took 2 weeks. I met with Richard Chin, the CEO, and 2 outside lawyers in an executive conference room with leather chairs and a view of the entire tech park. For 2 hours, they asked me questions. They recorded everything. They took notes. They asked for details I'd forgotten, dates I had to piece together, context I had to reconstruct. I told them about Trevor, Owen's cousin, fresh out of community college, somehow hired into IT despite bombing his technical interview. Marcus, one of the interviewers, had been confused when Trevor got the offer despite his recommendation not to hire. Owen had been on that panel. I told them about Owen's college roommate, promoted to team lead in sales over 2 more senior employees with better performance records. Owen had consulted on that decision. I told them about my own performance reviews, about Paul's uncomfortable conversations in hallways. And somewhere in the middle of telling it, I realized how large it was. Not a troubled marriage, a pattern, a system. Something Owen had been doing long before he met me. The investigation findings were more extensive than I'd expected. Trevor's hiring hadn't just benefited from Owen's presence on the panel. Owen had rewritten Trevor's assessment scores after the interview was complete, changing failing marks to passing ones, then submitting the falsified scores as official record. The promotion Owen's roommate received hadn't just benefited from Owen's good word. Owen had written fabricated peer reviews praising his work, submitted as if they'd come from actual colleagues. My performance reviews weren't the only ones he'd manipulated. They found 3 other employees whose ratings had been systematically lowered, all people who had, in some way, questioned Owen's authority or failed to be sufficiently useful to him. And there were complaints. Harassment complaints filed with HR, filed with Owen, that had disappeared without proper investigation because the accused employees were people Owen liked. This represents systematic abuse of position over multiple years, Richard Chin said. Fraud, falsification of records, retaliation, and failure to properly investigate misconduct reports. He slid a folder across the table. We're giving Owen a choice. He can resign quietly with standard severance, or we can terminate him for cause. If we terminate for cause, we're obligated to report certain violations to industry oversight boards. That could affect his ability to work in HR anywhere else. What did he choose? I asked. He has 48 hours to decide. But Abigail, whether he resigns or is terminated, this is over. Owen will not be working at Scottsdale Tech anymore. That night, there was an email. 2 a.m. Unknown sender. Subject line, about Owen Callahan. My first instinct was to delete it. More harassment. Someone else telling me I'd destroyed a good man. But something made me open it. Dear Abigail, my name is Vanessa Pritchard. I worked at Scottsdale Tech from 2018 to 2020 in the HR department under Owen's supervision. I'm reaching out because I heard about the investigation through mutual connections, and I think you should know that you're not the first person he's done this to. If you're willing to meet, I have information that might help your case. I wish someone had warned me about him before I started working there. Maybe I can at least help you now. Vanessa. I forwarded it to my attorney, Catherine Vance, family law, steel gray hair, and eyes that missed nothing immediately. Vanessa checked out. She met me at a coffee shop in Phoenix 3 days later. She was younger than me, late 20s, dark hair pulled back, eyes that looked older than her face. She told me about starting at Scottsdale Tech at 26, her first real HR job. How Owen had seemed amazing at first, charming, supportive, always complimenting her work. And then the requests that crossed lines. Personal errands, picking up his dry cleaning, getting coffee for his wife. He never used my name, just my wife. He'd say things like, "My wife is really demanding today. I need you to grab her favorite coffee so she's in a better mood." Or, "My wife doesn't appreciate how hard I work. But you get it, don't you?" I sat across from Vanessa and felt something cold settle in my chest. When she started dating someone, Owen got strange. Intrusive questions about her boyfriend. Suggestions she could do better. When she set a boundary, he began to dismantle her professionally fabricated write-ups, planted doubts in colleagues' minds, a harassment complaint she filed that went nowhere because it went to Owen. "He makes you sound crazy," Vanessa said. "He made me question my own reality." I knew that feeling. "Eventually, I just quit," she said. "It was easier than fighting." She looked at me directly. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. Because I realized I wasn't the only one. That this was his pattern. He finds someone he can control, someone younger, someone grateful, someone who trusts him, and when they push back, he destroys them. A pause. I'm willing to testify. If it helps. If it stops him from doing this to someone else. After Vanessa left, I sat in my car in the parking lot and cried. Not sad tears. Angry ones. For her, the 26-year-old who'd been excited about her first real job. And for me, the woman who'd spent 6 years being slowly erased and had called it marriage. That night, I did something I'd been avoiding. I went back through my career timeline with new eyes. 3 years ago, principal architect position, final round, passed over. 2 years ago, VP of engineering, final round, passed over. Each time, I'd accepted the loss as personal failure. I reached out to Tom, a former colleague who'd been on the VP hiring panel. We had lunch in Tempe. After some hesitation, he told me, after my final interview, Owen had approached the hiring committee privately. He told them I was brilliant technically, that wasn't in question, but he had concerns about my leadership presence. That I was going through personal issues affecting my judgment. That it might be better to wait a year or two before promoting me to that level. Did anyone question that he was your husband? I asked. We assumed he knew you better than we did. I drove back to Rachel's and did the math in my head. VP of engineering would have meant a 40% salary increase. Equity. A seat at the executive table. How much money had I lost? How many opportunities had slipped past because the man who claimed to love me was quietly, systematically closing doors? I sent Catherine everything. She called me the next morning. This is explosive, she said. This isn't just about the car or the credit card anymore. This is systematic economic abuse. We're going to use this. The divorce hearing was in early March. 8 months of discovery, depositions, legal maneuvering. 8 months of Owen's attorney Gerald Hoffman trying to paint me as vindictive and unstable. 8 months of waiting to tell my truth in a room where it would actually matter. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Beige walls, fluorescent lighting, that particular smell of old carpet and recycled air. Owen was already there when I arrived, charcoal suit, hair-styled, expression carefully neutral. The Owen everyone else saw. Professional, composed, respectable. The man who'd fooled an entire company for years. I knew the man underneath that suit. Judge Patricia Brennan entered. We stood. She was in her 50s, silver hair pulled back severely, an expression that gave nothing away. Owen went first. Hoffman walked him through a careful, masterful performance, wounded dignity, manufactured sadness, the story of a supportive husband whose ambitious wife had turned on him. She became obsessed with status, with control. Every lie threaded with just enough truth to be credible to someone who didn't know. Then Catherine stood up. She spent the next hour dismantling it. The emails to Paul, documenting 2 years of interference in my performance reviews. The voicemail, Owen's voice filling the courtroom, suggesting to my supervisor that I had personal issues affecting my judgment and should be passed over for promotion. The fabricated scores in Trevor's hiring file. The false peer reviews written for Owen's roommate. The harassment complaints that had disappeared. Vanessa's testimony. By the time Catherine was finished, Owen's wounded dignity had evaporated. He sat cornered, flushed, a muscle ticking in his jaw. Then it was my turn. Mrs. Morrison, Catherine began. Can you describe your marriage to Owen Callahan? I took a breath. I spent 6 years making myself smaller so Owen could feel bigger, I said. I apologized for having needs. I accepted blame for his anger. I believed him when he told me I was too sensitive, too demanding, too ambitious. I let him convince me that caring about my own career made me a bad wife. I looked directly at Owen. The car wasn't about the car. It was about the fact that he'd been taking pieces of me for years, and I'd finally run out of pieces to give. It was about realizing I deserved a partner who celebrated my success instead of sabotaging it. It was about choosing myself for the first time in 6 years. Judge Brennan took 2 days to issue her ruling. I've reviewed all the evidence, testimony, and documentation presented in this case, she began. What I've seen is a disturbing pattern of financial manipulation, professional sabotage, and emotional abuse masquerading as marriage. She awarded me the house. She ordered Owen to pay compensatory damages for the career opportunities I'd lost due to his interference, $175,000. She denied his request for alimony. She ordered him to reimburse half of all fraudulent credit card charges. Mr. Callahan, Judge Brennan said, looking at him directly, "You used your position, your marriage, and your family connections as weapons to control and diminish your wife. You sabotaged her professionally while claiming to support her. This court finds your conduct reprehensible." As we left the courtroom, Owen tried to approach me. Catherine stepped between us. "My client has nothing to say to you. You'll never be happy," Abby Owen said. His voice was low, bitter. I looked at him, this man I'd spent 6 years trying to please. "I'd rather be alone," I said, "than be with someone who made me feel alone." I walked out of that courthouse into bright March sunlight, and for the first time in 8 months, I could breathe fully. Now, I need to stop here for a second. What do you think happened after the verdict? Option A, Owen's family finally accepted the truth. Option B, they doubled down and tried to retaliate. Option C, they disappeared entirely. Drop A, B, or C in the comments. Let me tell you about the flying monkeys. Owen chose to resign rather than be terminated for cause, a quiet exit with standard severance that bought him some professional protection, but did nothing to protect my inbox. Within 24 hours of the conference room confrontation, before the investigation even concluded, his family had mobilized. Owen's mother called me 18 times on the day it happened. 18. By the time I answered, God help me, I did answer once, from the Scottsdale Tech parking lot. She was a wreck of tears and fury. "How could you do this to my son?" She was full sobbing, words breaking apart. "Owen gave you everything. A home, a life, respect. He supported your career even when people said he shouldn't marry someone so ambitious. And this is how you repay him?" "He violated company policy," I said. "He's been manipulating my performance reviews for." "You're a liar." Flat. Final. "You're a liar and a manipulator. You seduced my son. You made him think you loved him. And now you're trying to ruin him because you can't control him anymore." She hung up. Owen's brother posted on Facebook that evening. Rachel showed me, her face tight with anger. Some people will destroy an entire family over material possessions. Some people forget where they came from and who helped them get where they are. Praying for my brother during this difficult time. The comments were what you'd expect, friends of Owen's family, people I'd met at holidays and birthdays, all weighing in on the unnamed person who was clearly a monster. Owen's aunt left a voicemail. "We'd met twice. I just want you to know that we see you for what you are. A gold digger who never appreciated what this family did for you." Charlotte sent 5 paragraphs, single-spaced, detailed, listing every sacrifice Owen had supposedly made for our marriage. How he turned down the California job because I didn't want to move. How he defended me to his family when they worried I was too career-focused to be a good wife. None of it accurate. Or rather, all of it accurate in that alternative version of reality where Owen was the hero and I was the difficult wife who needed to be managed. It ended with, "I'll never forgive you for what you've done to my brother. None of us will." I sat on Rachel's couch reading that text over and over until the words blurred. "They're wrong," Rachel said. "You know that, right? They're completely wrong." "Are they?" My voice came out small. "Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I should have just don't." Rachel's voice was sharp. "Don't let them rewrite what actually happened." But it was hard not to when everyone around you was telling the same story, that you were the problem, the difficult one, the person who destroyed everything. It becomes easier to believe them than to trust your own experience. My mother called the next morning. "Honey," already I could hear the concern, the worry, the particular gentleness that meant she was about to say something I wouldn't want to hear. "Rachel told me what's been happening with Owen. Are you sure you're not overreacting? I know marriage is hard. Maybe you two should see a counselor before you burn everything down." "Mom, he gave away my company car without asking me. He's been sabotaging my performance reviews for 2 years. He opened a credit card in my name." Silence. Then, "But he's your husband. You made vows." "This isn't worse, Mom. This is abuse. Abuse." Her voice went up. "Honey, abuse is a strong word. Owen never hit you, did he? Maybe abuse isn't the right word. Maybe you're just going through a rough patch." "I have to go, Mom." I hung up before she could say anything else. Rachel found me 20 minutes later, still sitting on the bed staring at nothing. "Your mom?" she asked gently. I nodded. "Let me guess. She thinks you're overreacting. She thinks I should go to counseling. Work it out. Not give up so easily." Rachel sat next to me. Even the people who love us can't always see what we're going through, especially when the person hurting us is good at looking normal. I didn't respond to any of Owen's family. I documented all of it instead: the messages, the voicemail, the social media post. More evidence. More proof that the narrative being constructed about me was intentional, coordinated, deliberate. The same way everything Owen had done was deliberate. I was done being surprised by that. The divorce was finalized in April. Owen had chosen resignation over termination and disappeared into a smaller life, a startup in Tempe, a diminished role, a fresh start he'd needed to engineer because he'd burned the one he had. By May, I'd moved out of Rachel's guest room, which had become, over 11 months, more mine than guest, and into a one-bedroom apartment in Scottsdale. Big windows. A balcony that overlooked the city. High enough up that the Phoenix light spread out below like a circuit board at night. Mine, not ours. Mine. I furnished it deliberately. A couch I picked out myself, deep blue, comfortable, nothing like the stiff beige thing Owen had insisted made the living room look sophisticated. Art on the walls I actually liked. Abstract pieces with bold colors that made me happy when I looked at them. A kitchen table where I could spread out my laptop and work without someone suggesting I was too focused on my career. I bought instant coffee in bulk, the cheap kind. I drank it in front of the window and watched the mountain change colors in the early light and felt, for the first time in years, like the person in that apartment was actually me. Work became my refuge and my redemption. I threw myself into the API integration project that had stalled during all the chaos. Stayed late. Came in early, built something I was genuinely proud of, a system that would streamline vendor management across 5 departments and save the company an estimated $2 million in its first year. My team noticed the difference. The way I stopped apologizing before I spoke. The way I made decisions with confidence instead of second-guessing every choice. Jennifer, my assistant, pulled me aside one morning in June. "I don't know what happened," she said, "but you're different. Better. More like the person I thought you were when I first started working for you." "I'm just finally being myself," I told her. She nodded like she understood exactly what that meant. In September, 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Elena called me into her office. Richard Chin was there. So were 2 board members I recognized from company events. "We're creating a new position," Richard said. "VP of Solutions Architecture. The board met yesterday and unanimously agreed that you're the right person for the role." I stared at him. "Elena's been advocating for this for months," Richard continued. "The API integration project came in ahead of schedule and under budget. The client retention rate in your division is the highest in the company. You've mentored 2 junior architects who are now outperforming people twice their age." He looked at me directly. "Abigail, you're exactly what this company needs in leadership." I don't know what to say. Elena smiled. "Say yes. You've earned this 100 times over. And Abigail, this time, there's no one whispering in anyone's ear that you can't handle it." The promotion came with a 40% raise. Equity. A larger team. A seat at the executive table, the same table where decisions about my career had been made in rooms I'd never been invited into. At the company holiday party, Richard pulled me aside near the bar. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice low. "Owen used to talk to me about you. He'd say things like, 'Abigail's brilliant, but she's fragile. Too much pressure and she'll break. We need to be careful about how much responsibility we give her.'" He paused. I'm ashamed to say I believed him. I felt that old familiar tightness in my chest. But it didn't consume me the way it used to. "I'm glad you finally see the truth," I said. "What's that?" "That I was never fragile. I was just being crushed. I'd sworn off dating. At least a year, maybe 2, maybe indefinitely. I had enough to rebuild without adding that particular complexity. But James kept showing up. I met him at a tech security conference in November, right after my promotion. He was presenting on API vulnerabilities, and I asked a question during the Q&A that turned into a 30-minute conversation afterward. Tall, soft-spoken, gray streaks in dark hair, laugh lines around his eyes. Divorced 3 years earlier. Cybersecurity architect at a different firm. No professional overlap. No complicated history. Just a guy who was genuinely interested in the technical problem I'd raised. "Wanna grab coffee?" He'd asked. "I'd love to hear more about your integration approach." Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a weekend hiking trip to Sedona in January. He asked questions and listened to the answers. He celebrated when I told him about landing a major client. Actually celebrated, no qualifier, no subtle diminishment. When I told him about Owen and the divorce, sitting on a red rock trail with the Arizona desert stretched out below us, he was quiet for a long time. "That must have been incredibly hard," he said finally. "It was, but it was necessary. I'm sorry you went through that." He took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "But I'm also grateful. Because the woman who survived that, who fought her way out and rebuilt her career and learned to trust herself again, she's incredible." By March, a year after the courthouse, we were spending most weekends together. He never once made me feel like I was too much, too ambitious, too focused on my work. When I got excited about a technical problem, he leaned in and asked follow-up questions. When I worked late, he brought dinner to my office and sat quietly reading while I finished. One Saturday evening in April, sitting on his couch after dinner, he asked carefully, "What would you think about meeting your mom?" I looked at him, this man who made me laugh, who challenged me intellectually, who never once tried to make me smaller. "I'd like that," I said. Then, "But James, I need you to know something. I'm never going to be the woman who makes herself smaller. I'm never going to apologize for my career or my ambition or taking up space. If that's going to be a problem," he pulled me closer and kissed my forehead. "Good," he said. "I don't want you to be ambitious, driven, brilliant, taking up all the space she deserves. That's exactly who I want." I ran into Owen once. A Saturday afternoon in late May. A Whole Foods parking lot in Scottsdale. I almost didn't recognize him. He'd gained weight. His hair had gone almost completely gray. He had a look, defeated, diminished, like life had been wearing him down from the inside. "Abby." I stopped, turned around. We stood there for a long, strange moment. Two people who'd once shared a life, now strangers in a parking lot with the Phoenix heat pressing down on us. "I heard about your promotion," he said finally. His voice was different, quieter. "VP. That's really good. Thank you. I'm working at a startup now. Smaller company. Smaller role." A pause. Fresh start. I nodded, not sure what to say to that. "I've been in therapy," Owen continued. The words came out stiff, rehearsed, like he'd been practicing them in his car. "My counselor says I have control issues. That I was not a good partner to you. That I used manipulation instead of communication." It wasn't an apology. Not quite. But it was acknowledgement. More than I'd expected to ever hear from him. "I hope therapy helps you," I said. And I meant it. Not for my sake. For whoever came next in his life. He looked at me. That performative composure, the armor he'd worn so long, cracked for just a second. "Are you happy?" I thought about my apartment with the blue couch and the art I loved. About my job, my team, the respect I'd earned on my own merit. About James, who was probably at my place right now setting up for movie night. "Yes," I said. "I really am." "Good." His voice was soft, genuine. "That's good. You deserve that." We said goodbye. I watched him walk away, this man who had once controlled so much of my life, now just another person I used to know. I felt no anger, no bitterness. Something quieter than either of those. Gratitude, that I'd found the strength to leave. That was the last time I saw Owen Callahan. I didn't take his calls after that. I didn't respond to his texts. The one time his mother tried to reach me through a mutual contact, I let it go unanswered. Not out of cruelty, not even out of anger, but because I'd finally learned something it had taken me 6 years and a parking spot and a forward question to understand. Presence in my life is a privilege, not a right, not an obligation. Not a debt owed because of a down payment or a shared last name or 20 years of Sunday dinners. A privilege that I extend or don't based on whether someone has earned it. Owen's family had made their choice when they flooded my phone with accusations and posted about unnamed people destroying good men on Facebook and left voicemails calling me a gold digger. I didn't need to argue with that verdict. I didn't need them to understand. I didn't need closure. I already had it. I had it the moment I said, "Actually, we never discussed it." Rachel came over for dinner in June, the first time she'd seen my new apartment fully furnished. She stood in the doorway for a moment just looking at it. The blue couch, the art, the monstera plant I'd bought myself in March that was somehow still alive. The kitchen table covered in my laptop and papers and a half-drunk cup of instant coffee. "This looks like you," she said. "Yeah," I said. That was kind of the point. She stayed until midnight. We ordered Thai food and drank wine and talked about everything except Owen. We talked about her new job, my team, a hiking trail she'd found outside Flagstaff. Things that mattered because they were ours, chosen freely, belonging to lives that made sense. When she left, I stood on my balcony for a while in the warm night air, looking out at the city lights. The Audi was in the parking garage below, back where it belonged, in a spot with my new title on the sign. I couldn't see it from here, but I knew it was there. Elena had asked me once, months after everything settled, if I regretted how it all went down. No, I told her. I regret how long it took me to speak up, but I don't regret speaking up. She'd smiled. That warm, knowing smile that had given me courage in a glass-walled conference room on a Tuesday morning that changed everything. Watching you stand up for yourself that day, that made me proud to be your boss. But more than that, it reminded me why we have policies, why we protect people, and why silence is never the answer when someone's being diminished. She was right. Silence wasn't the answer. The answer was 4 words. Why the taxi today? The answer was, "Actually, we never discussed it." The answer was a single moment of truth in a conference room. A boss who refused to look away. A woman who finally understood she was worth fighting for. Worth every difficult conversation, every uncomfortable moment, every bridge burned with people who valued her silence over her dignity. If you're watching this and you've been the invisible one, the difficult one, the dramatic one, the one who was told that caring about your own needs made you selfish, I want you to say something to you. Your worth isn't determined by whether someone else sees it. You don't owe anyone forgiveness on their timeline. Not ever. Not when they're ready. Not when it would be convenient for them. Forgiveness, if it comes on your schedule, in your time, for your healing, not theirs. Boundaries aren't revenge. They're architecture. They're the blueprint for the life you're actually trying to build. And chosen family? Chosen family is real family. The people who show up in the parking lot at 2 a.m., who bring dinner to your hospital bed, who tell you the truth when everyone else is telling you what you want to hear, who hold their hand out and say, "Come stay with me," I mean it, as long as you need. Those people are your family. Blood is the accident of birth. Family is the choice you make every day. I lost a marriage. I lost a house I'd helped pay for. I lost relationships with people who preferred Owen's version of events over the truth. But I gained something more valuable than any of it. I gained the woman I'd been disappearing for 6 years. The one who drank her cheap coffee at the window and watched the mountain turn pink and gold in the early light and knew, somewhere underneath all the accommodation and the compromise and the careful management of someone else's ego, that she was worth more than this. She was right. My Audi sits in its parking spot every morning. VP of Solutions Architecture. The sign says that now, not because Owen allowed it or failed to prevent it or finally decided I'd earned it. Because I did. And that was never something he could take away. It was only ever something I could give up. I stopped giving it up. If this story meant something to you, if you've been the person making yourself smaller so someone else could feel bigger, drop a comment. Tell me your story. Or just let me know you're here. Because honestly, knowing you're out there listening means more than I can say. Subscribe and hit the notification bell because I have more stories to tell, and the next one is one I've been waiting to share for a long time.